Fireworks continue to go off here for the Crimson Tide here in this 2026 recruiting cycle. Today, they have been able to pick up commitment from 2026 four-star defensive lineman Nolan Wilson out of Mississippi. He becomes the Tide's 18th commit here in this 2026 recruiting cycle, joining a defensive line class that looks as if it's going to be really good and really talented and kind of a perfect fit for the way that the Crimson Tide want to attack the defensive line position and kind of how they want their roster to look in terms of coming from the defensive front. I'll talk about that a little bit later in this video. But as always, I'm Justin Smith, the Director of Recruiting and Managing Editor here at Touchdown, Alabama. Happy Independence Day. Happy 4th of July to you guys. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your holiday to spend with us here at Touchdown, Alabama to break down this latest commit to the Crimson Tide. But Wilson is a guy kind of putting together a category of Xavier Colwell, Cedarian Morgan, guys who have been getting recruited by the University of Alabama in terms of the football program for a long time. Wilson recruitment is really interesting in terms of the fact that the Crimson Tide were the first program to offer him. This is something that doesn't happen on a consistent basis, but it probably happens a little bit more than the typical fan may realize. And now that the Crimson Tide were the first program to offer Wilson, it played a special role in his recruitment. I remember catching up with him at the Under Armour New Orleans stop, which is kind of like some of the footage that you guys are seeing right now. And he told me that he loved Alabama. He loved their coaching staff. He had a great relationship with Freddie Roach, a good relationship with Alabama's head coach, Kalen DeBoer, who he called the boss man in Tuscaloosa. Also talked about how the fact that they were the first team to offer him and that they will hold a special place in his heart because they were the first program to take a chance on him with that verbal offer. Of course, his recruitment continued to grow, choosing the Crimson Tide today over schools like Ole Miss, Miami, Auburn, some of the schools that really wanted this talented four-star defensive lineman. Got to Tuscaloosa during the month of June for an official visit. Before that visit, I asked them, what do the Crimson Tide need to do in terms of improving their point or step in terms of just where they are in this recruitment in the future? He basically just said he needs to get back to Tuscaloosa and get a feel for the program and see if he really fits there. Got back in June and looked as if that visit was a success for the four-star defensive lineman. He's 6'4", 260 pounds, so he will need to gain some weight to compete in the SEC in the future, but he's a guy who brings a lot of versatility to the table. You're going to see on this film, you're going to see him rushing from the edge. You're going to see him playing in the interior a little bit. When he's rushing from the edge, you see him bend the edge. When he's playing more to the interior of the defensive line, you see him be able to flash some speed to power, but you also see him be an opportunist. A lot of times throughout this film, he's not only making sacks, he's making sack fumbles, or however you want to put it. He's the guy who's making those game-changing type of plays, games that really can have him categorized as a game changer. If he can take that little part of his game, that's really important. If he has a knack for that, which it seems like he does have when you turn this film, that's something that could be really beneficial to him in the future in terms of him getting paid, not only at the collegiate level, but in the NFL level, but also could be really beneficial for the Crimson Tide in terms of him being a guy who can change games with that type of playmaking ability from a defensive front standpoint. Like I said earlier, J.J. Finch, who's also verbally committed to the Crimson Tide, Jamarian Matthews, Kamarian Johnson, and also their latest commit, Nolan Wilson. All these guys are versatile defensive linemen. Yeah, they can play that field side defensive end, that bandit role, the LT Overton plays, but they also can shift down, play more so to the interior of the defensive line. I think this is something Nolan Wilson is going to be able to develop into at the next level as well. But as always, I am Justin Smith, the Director of Recruiting Managing Editor here at Touchdown, Alabama. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube channel.